Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and to part 3 of the series 3 build diary episodes. Now I'm really excited to be bringing this to you. I feel like it's a much awaited video, so let's get started. To kick this episode off, I'm removing the roof lining, any nuts and bolts holding the sides in, and finally removing the roof and sides. A selection of screwdrivers and a very smiley face because I'm getting stuck back into the series 3. The roof lining is now out and, like the rest of the series, pretty crunchy. Nut and bolt removal to prepare for the sides and roof to be lifted off. So this 32-piece spanner set is from Blue Spot. They kindly gifted these to me along with a couple of other bits and bats. These are metric and imperial spanners and they are incredibly useful for older Land Rovers like these because it's just such a mixture of metric and imperial nuts and bolts. Taking off the light surrounds, side lights, front indicators, just to ensure that I don't break them because I'm so clumsy I'll probably end up breaking them if I leave them on the wing. So I'm just taking them off and I'm going to put them in storage so I definitely don't break them. Taking out screws and bolts from the dash. A little bit of a random job, to be honest. It was quite late in the day at this point, but I'm just making sure to bag and tag everything that I'm taking off. I removed the apron panel as well from the front and decided to cut the bolts off of the front bumper with an angle grinder because they were just not coming off. They were so stubborn, these bolts, and I'd had enough at this point, so I just went at them with an angle grinder. And look at that as well, used a rivet instead of a split pin in there, proper cowboy job. Next, removing the stubborn bolts from the radiator panel. So now on to day 2, removing the car cover that's been sat over the Series 3 over winter because as I'm doing everything outside I've needed to wait for the weather to warm up a little bit. Now I'm using my pretty much brand new, I have played about with it a little bit before this, but this is the first proper job that the plasma cutter has done. This is the Powerweld XTP40 plasma cutter, so 40 amps, which will cut through metal that is up to 12mm in thickness. This plasma cutter has stood up to everything I've thrown it so far, so I'm just slicing through the bumper as I decided it wasn't really worth saving and it had gone a bit crusty and was held in by incorrect bolts. So I just decided to cut my losses with it, and they're quite cheap to get new anyway, so I just thought I'd slice through that and the plasma cutter just sliced through it like butter. If you are thinking about getting one, honestly just do it. I'll leave a link in the description to the one that I have if you are interested into researching them a little bit more. Working on removing the front wings now. Holding a spanner on one side, I'm using my Blue Spot spanners again because they came in some smaller sizes which were really handy, and then just using a ratchet on the other side. Now this is the face of achievement. I managed to get this rounded nut and bolt out with very little drama. It's the little wins. Every single bolt was basically a nightmare to get off. I really did try not to round them or shear them. These bolts were a pain and a nightmare if you are scared of spiders, but nothing that a socket on an extension can't do. And that is another reason. I do get people commenting saying that I need an impact gun and this, that and the other. I have got one, I've got an impact gun, but you're only meant to use them in certain applications. So for instance, I don't actually want these bolts to shear. I did want to save most of them because When restoring a vehicle like this, I wanted to get as many bolts, either if I had to replace them, I wanted to get identicals for them or as good as, and I wanted to see where everything came from, how many nuts and bolts that I'd need, so I wanted to avoid shearing them as much as possible. And whilst I gave my arms a rest, I decided to attack the interior more. And then when I felt brave again, I applied everything that I learnt from the front wing to the second wing and removed that and the radiator panel. So that is both wings removed, and he is looking scary at this point. I don't know, it's a bit like his face is missing really. A quick tea and chocolate square break before the engine removal. These are the straps that I bought. I got 2 straps, both able to hold 2 tons. So here is the engine crane that I'm using. It's part of the Clark range at Machine Mart, and I must say, before doing all of this, I actually drained the coolant and removed all the hoses and things like that from the engine as well, so that nothing was wrapped around and holding it in place. So I just thought I'd show quickly around the front chassis legs, axle, bulkhead, and why the chassis needs replacing. As I said in an earlier video, the bulkhead really, realistically does not need replacing, but because I'm doing a full ground up restoration of this vehicle, it just seems fit to throw in a new bulkhead as well. I don't really see the point in just welding on some footwells and keeping the old bulkhead. I will be keeping it, I do think, just for maybe like a different project or something like that, but it just makes sense in my head just to start afresh. A really nice close-up for you there of a crusty leaf spring and a rusty chassis. So next up, removing the seat box, just tackling those little bolts and nuts that are everywhere. So what are my plans for the series? Well, when I first got it, I envisaged it would be done within a year, but that's not how long-term restoration projects work. Unfortunately, life does get in the way, and working in the winter months just isn't really possible outdoors because it just gets too cold, too damp, and it's just a bit too much really. So with it being a long-term restoration project, and with me now having the Discovery as well to contend with and keep up to, I do think it will be next summer that it'll be possibly ready by. I'm hoping to get a rolling chassis together as soon as possible, but to be honest with you, my efforts are going into the Discovery, so that's not rotting away, because that one is a little bit more pressing and easier to get on the road. I'm hoping that'll be on the road sort of by the end of winter this year. But anyway, the plans for the series are to have it done by next summer so that I can take the roof off, sides down, and just ride around in summer, go through the Yorkshire Dales with Laddie, having the wind blowing through his fur, and just doing things that I love with it really. I want to restore it to as original as possible, but I probably will add my own little touches to it and things that make more sense in my eyes and give it a lot more rust proofing than it would have had when it was factory fresh and things like that. So it'll be original but improved in some ways, but you'll see that in the next few videos. I'm removing nuts from the engine mounts. You could only get in some of them with like a spanner, so it was like a tiny turn. So this is where I attach the shackles and straps, and how I strapped it all up to the engine crane. This is what it looks like and how I did it. Now it's time to remove the engine, slowly jacking up the crane. And it does take a little bit of adjusting, a little bit of back and forth, but I just tried to do it as carefully as I could and just really ease it out and make sure that the engine didn't swing or anything like that. Something that I always get asked is if I'm keeping the patina look, and I would absolutely love to, but it doesn't really make sense if I'm going to be doing like a ground up restoration to keep the bodywork looking quite tatty and not very well rust proofed, so I am going to respray it, but it'll develop its own character and its own patina over time, which I'll keep, you know, up to and just keep it as rust proofed as possible, because living in the UK in winter months, unfortunately the council think the best idea is to just salt grit every single road throughout the winter months, so it doesn't even matter if it's snowing, if it's icy. So instead of making it mandatory like other countries to get winter tyres and things like that, instead they just put a load of salt out on the roads, which rusts anybody's car out. So it will develop its own patina over time, but I don't plan on keeping the one that it's got currently because it just doesn't make sense really. And here it is removed and still in the air, because now I drained the oil and it is still pretty clean, maybe a little bit contaminated, but I'm going to have a look into that further when I do a full engine strip down, which will be another future video. The seat box is now out. I just wanted to wait for some assistance instead of manhandling it out like I would normally, but I'm just so clumsy it'd probably go flying through the air and into someone's back garden or through the window, so I just thought it's best to wait really. So the engine is under a tarpaulin for now. I am going to move that into dry storage though, ready for its rebuild. He really is the clerk of works, so he's always there. The only place that he hasn't been yet is the unit to the Discovery. He hasn't actually been in the Discovery yet, so hopefully he'll find that a little bit more comfortable and a little bit of a softer ride than the 110. Now on to removing the gearbox, and again just removing any nuts and bolts from the gearbox mounts. And the same story with the straps, just trying to make sure that I do everything in a safe and proper manner. And out it comes. Now I thought I'd end this episode with a couple of goodies that Bearmac have kindly sent. So next on my list of things to do is to get a rolling chassis together for the Series 3. If you've watched my previous episodes, you'll know that I've completely sprayed up a brand new galvanised chassis, and I have a new galvanised bulkhead to go on there as well. And Bearmac have kindly gifted me 4 leaf springs, some axle buffers, bushes, and loads of other bits and bats like that, but I'll get more stuck into that next episode. But thank you so much Bearmac for gifting me these, and I can't wait to share them within the next couple of episodes. Possibly the next one I might be getting a rolling chassis together. I honestly have no idea where I'm going to go from here, but I can't wait to share it with you. So this is where I'm going to leave it for today. I'm sorry it were a short one, but I just wanted to get another video out there and just ensure that I am cracking on with the Series 3 as well. As much as the Discovery captured most of my attention, I am still ploughing through the Series 3 at the same time. So I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you again next time.